I want to thank again everyone for joining us. This is our first webinar as the Stewardship Action Foundation. We educate for a circular and equitable economy here in the United States. And we are a 501c3 organization that was set up to really work on the issues that we've been working on in California and make them national. California is 12% of the waste stream in the market. And when we do things, it matters to the whole country. And sometimes we can expedite progress in the country in this space by just simply going straight from California to national policy. So today we're going to talk about sharps and medicine waste management, innovations, and policy updates. Now, we will not have time to cover everything in the innovation or the policy space, but we're going to do our best to give a high-level overview, and we can do more webinars early next year to flesh out more of especially what's happening in the policy side and any new innovations that we're aware of. Next slide, please. So I want to thank our sponsors. We've been working very closely with HealthBeacon and Marion Briggs. I want to thank them very much for sponsoring the event today so it could be free, along with our friends at UltiMed, who actually had their previous CEO be the first round of board members for the National Stewardship Action Council. So we're very, very grateful to them both for sponsoring today to make this a free webinar for all of you. Next slide, please. So just quickly, you might want to take a picture of the slide. You'll have all of our emails, so you can follow up directly with presenters with your own questions if you don't want to ask them today or don't have time. So myself, I'll be facilitating today. Marion Briggs with HealthBeacon, Cedric Geisel with Johnson & Johnson. They'll be talking about their latest innovations. Peter Dahab with Palumina, a company that is now making recyclable pill bottles. Sarah Hansen again with UltiMed, which is a wonderful sharps company with an innovative package and mailback program. And then Manuel Huber with Corber and really the European Alliance to Zero on how this industry is working together in Europe to reduce waste and create a circular economy in this space. Next slide, please. So just a little about us. I've been in this business 32 years, all based out of Sacramento, California. I've been a consultant to cities and counties. I've been advisor to the chair of the State Waste Management Board. I have done policy. I've been an advocate, and I started three nonprofits now that have advocated for producer responsibility very successfully. So the California Product Stewardship Council was the first in 2007. Then the National Stewardship Action Council in 2015, and now the Stewardship Action Foundation as of last year. And that is so that we can have the whole breadth of deep dive California policy, also national, and we are now working with other states. So if you're interested in this work and the education, please feel free to join us, fund us. We do everything from truth in labeling. We've got a congressional bill introduced that's bipartisan, which we're very proud of, based on the bill we did in California on calling wipes that were previously called flushable, not flushable, and proper labeling. We're working on national bottle bill, tobacco vaping issues and take back. So please follow us on social media and learn more. Next slide, please. Our board is just a simple 4-member board. We have 4 wonderful board members from different parts of the country and different parts of the field. I want to thank Eric, Maya, Shyman, and Michael for their support. Next slide, please. And then the National C4, so these are sister organizations, we formed first because we needed a vehicle to advocate and lobby on behalf of driving a circular and equitable economy. And we mean equitable very seriously. We can't drive a circular economy at the expense of anyone. It's got to be all together and to be fair. So I speak all over the world on these issues. I was speaking on packaging EPR back in 2010 in Europe. I've spoken on e-waste in Zurich in 2010. Been in this field a long time and proud of this work. Next slide, please. But I want to highlight quickly, what is a circular economy? We follow the Ellen MacArthur Foundation definition, which is a 3-part definition. And first is to design out waste and pollution in the system. Then keep what's left in motion. Keep recycling those materials through composting and recycling. And then go back and fix what you broke with the environment. Regenerate natural systems. It all three goes together. It is not just recycling. And I really want to highlight that. So the goal is to decouple our economic activity and growth from the constant use and abuse, really, of natural resources. And that's key, and that started to happen in Europe now. So we're very excited about that, but we have a long way to go in the US. Next slide, please. And again, just a high-level overview, we have legislated EPR and stewardship programs in California, everything from getting, take back of the producers for lead-based paint lunch boxes that were illegally sold into California, to ag pesticide containers, packaging, bottles and cans, mattresses, carpet, mercury thermostats, and medicines and needles. And we have to add now what we just passed and got signed by the governor, which was the big packaging EPR bill, SB 54 here in California, which also is the first circular economy bill, I believe, in the world. It not only is EPR for all packaging, but it literally gives $5 billion to California to clean up all the plastic pollution around the state, $500 million a year from the producers to clean up our coasts and our public spaces, which we're very excited about. Next slide, please. So you can see the breadth of what we work on. But the purpose of this webinar is to focus again on the needles and the medicines, particularly in the residential space, but we're happy to share the innovations in also the commercial space to reduce waste and then ensure safe and proper disposal. We've all seen and heard about the problems. Medicines were being flushed down the toilet. Some agencies at the federal level were actually telling people to do that. And our systems were not designed to handle every chemical being removed from our water. And now we're seeing the recirculation of these chemicals, which are designed at small doses to affect us and our health. So we don't want people flushing medicines. We also don't want them flushing needles. 7% of people in California, when surveyed a few years ago, were flushing needles. That was also sticking our sanitation workers in the wastewater space. So needles, and of course, because of the opioid epidemic, we're all seeing more needles all over the streets of our country, and it's dangerous, and we want that stopped as well. But even for the people who have real medical needs and are using them legally, they need a safe way to dispose of them. Otherwise, our waste workers were getting stuck. Next slide, please. So that's really the problem. And this picture I wanted to show you, I've got a lot more, but we don't have time. But at the top right, those red bins are full of containers full of needles and loose needles that have been hand-picked off sort lines in California. The reason I show you this is those human hands have to stick into trash on a moving conveyor belt to literally sort these things out. Every time they see a needle, they have to hit the emergency button, stop the line, and use tongs to try and get all these needles off the line. Or people put them in things like what was a recyclable PET bottle, a soda bottle, a shampoo bottle, a something else bottle. But when they get run over by the trucks, they can literally splatter and crush, and they just throw needles all over the floor of the transfer station. This is completely unsafe. I have met people who have been stuck by needles by cleaning the tires of their front loaders that were stuck in the tires. It's very traumatic. Some of them can't even go back to work, and it's a workers' comp issue. I've been committed to solving this problem for over 10 years now, and we are going to do it in the United States because I truly believe this is wrong and unfair that these workers have to be exposed to this. We've also been working very hard for a long time on safe medicine disposal. And that's a picture of me at one of our first pharmacies here in Sacramento that we installed a medicine bin. We had a grant and installed that medicine bin. I was on TV with the local mayor, Christopher Cabaldon, and thankfully that pharmacist was very helpful at getting that bin installed. But so this has been a passion of mine for a long time. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to turn it over to our friend and partner, Marion Briggs with HealthBeacon, and she's going to talk about HealthBeacon as a business, what they do, where they're based, and the innovations that they're working on in this space. So again, feel free to put any questions you have in the Q&A. We are not going to use the chat today, and we'll be asking those at appropriate times. So Welcome, Marion, and thank you so much for being here. I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thanks very much, Heidi. Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. So my name is Marion Briggs. I am the Sustainability Manager at HealthBeacon, and it really is my pleasure to join Heidi and my colleagues here and to introduce you to our company and talk a little bit about our green labs for managing injection waste in a more sustainable manner. And Heidi and I have been talking about putting this webinar together for over a year, and I'm just really excited to bring all this information to you and to hear what everybody else has to say. So I was brought into HealthBeacon a couple of years ago to help them launch their first Green Labs waste solution in Dublin, Ireland. So that's where I am right now. I'm sitting in Dublin. We also have facilities and we work in the United States, and we're really expanding quite quickly. But my job was to help launch this waste solution. And now as the sustainability manager, I oversee a much broader portfolio of sort of all of our internal and external sustainability initiatives. So just a quick introduction. HealthBeacon is a health technology company whose mission is to build smart tools for managing medication. So we do this for medications that are taken through injection. And specifically, our company focuses on patients in the home setting rather than in a doctor's office or in the hospital. So here in this photograph, you can see our flagship product. This is our FDA-approved Smart Sharp Spin, and it's here sitting on a patient's counter, really elegantly fitting into their home setting, and there for them to work as they manage their injection routines. Next slide, please. So 30 million people in the US and the EU are dependent on injectable medications, sometimes daily, weekly, once a month. Many of these patients have to go on these types of medications for really serious and often chronic conditions. And unfortunately, up to half of them fail to keep up with their medication schedules. So we really wanted to address this with our technology. And what we've shown is that over a 12-month period, the users of our Smart Sharp Spin actually show an increased adherence to their medication by 26%. And ultimately, this is what our goal was, to help them adhere to their medication and increase the likelihood that they'll get the efficacy of the drugs that they're on by following the routine that their clinician has laid out for them. Next slide, please. And actually, if you don't mind, this is a video. I just want to quickly show you our product family in a little bit more depth. Thanks very much, Victoria. So originally, we came to market with this Smart Sharp Spin here that you see spinning around. We took a traditional, already approved medical sharp spin, and we encased it in this really nice patient support tool. And behind the scenes, what's happening is that we've loaded their prescription, the patient's prescription, into the device through the cloud. So they work with their care team to make sure that that's all correct information. And then the device lights up. It gives them a reminder of when to take their medication. And when they dispose of their used injection, the device takes a photograph. It gives them an adherence score and a little smile. And then we use image recognition to make sure that they've taken the correct medication at the correct time. So the next product is not on the market yet, but hopefully coming soon. This is our HB Flexi device. So basically, we took everything that we learned with our first device and we flat packed it into a lid. And this gives us a number of really fantastic things. First of all, we can do battery power. We have Wi-Fi capability. And then this is a device that's much more flexible, as the name would show, so that you can use it in different situations. So it fits on different sizes of bins, and you can use it if someone's taking less medication, something much smaller, or we can even use it in a clinical setting, a larger bin. So we also have a companion app that is really a huge leap forward for us. So every person that's on a HealthBeacon device has this companion app. They have their injection routine in the palm of their hand. It gives them reminders. It tells them where to take their injections. It helps them with managing their schedule. In addition, there's modules on this app for learning, and it shows them when their bin is full and allows them to customize this in any way to their own needs. So the use of all of this is to better help the patient manage their underlying conditions and get the best outcome possible for their treatment. And then really, we're a data company. So the data is then available through a network of dashboards, and these can be used for the pharma companies to give them information about their drugs and the efficacy of them, and they also go directly to the patient's care team. Thanks, Victoria. You can go back to the slides, please. Okay, so, you know, for HealthBeacon, we really feel that our role, even though we're an SME, we're not an enormous company, we're growing really, really fast, and we actually went public last year, but we felt that it was really important for us to take an extended producer responsibility approach. So according to the World Bank, small and medium businesses make up about 90% of businesses and account for 50% of employment worldwide. And in Europe, excuse me, the literature estimates that 60 to 70% of industrial pollution is created by SMEs. And so again, we felt like even though we're small or smallish, it was really important that we took full responsibility for our product. So we follow this extended producer responsibility approach. Next slide, please. So this is just a quick history of what we've done. So we started with a circular approach from the beginning. So that unit that I showed you, that is sent out on a lease program, and then we bring that back in a circular fashion. We have those brought back to our facilities where they're refurbished, they're cleaned until the point that they're back in new condition, any parts are replaced, and then they're sent back out again. So we try and keep the unit itself in the market for as long as possible. We also got mail-back approval in the US so that we could tackle the waste that comes through our sharp spins. So now we have a mail-back program in the US. We also joined the National Stewardship Action Council and Heidi Sanborn, and we're founding members of the Alliance to Zero, and I'll let my colleague Manuel talk about that a little bit later. We also launched our Green Labs, which I'm going to show you next, in Dublin, our first one in April of this year. So this was really exciting for us. We've been working for a long time to try and get this up and running. We also did some work on calculating the carbon that can be saved by this process. And this coming weekend, we are launching our first Green Labs in Florida. So this is very, very exciting time for us. A lot of stuff is happening. Next slide, please. So this, I'm sure, looks very familiar to everybody. This is our mail-back program and our process here. So our device actually knows when the bin inside is 85% full. And what it does is it lets us, the company, know, hey, Marion's bin is 85% full. You need to send her out an empty bin and collect the full one. So in the US, as I mentioned, we have mail-back. So we'll send the patient a mail-back kit and retrieve their waste. In Europe, we have drivers in Europe, although we're in Dublin and Ireland, although we're actually transferring over to using a mail-back system here as well. So the bins come back into our facility, our Green Labs, where they undergo a 10-step process, which I'll show you. And then they're cleaned, dried, inspected, repackaged, and sent back out again. So now not only are we using the external smart sharp spin in a circular manner, but we're also tackling the internal sharp spin. Next slide, please. Okay, we've got another exciting video for you here. All right, so here's our Green Labs. Once a bin comes into our Green Labs, it's unpackaged, and then what we do is we actually are able to separate the waste by drug and by manufacturer, and the pharma clients really appreciate this. Once enough of one type of drug is collected, the waste is brought into our processing room. It's delidded, the waste is tipped out so the technician can reconcile what our device has told us is in the bins. And then at this point, our bins and lids are placed into our sterilization unit, and even the wastewater is collected in Ireland. It's collected, it's not in the States, but in Ireland, the water is collected and sent over the top and dealt with off-site. So once the bins are cleaned, they're moved into our clean room where they're loaded onto racks for drying. And then once they're dry, they're re-registered onto the system and are ready for redistribution. With the injection waste itself, once there's enough to process, it goes into our small in-house autoclave where it's sterilized and shredded. So we actually handle this waste on site. And then this waste is collected by an advanced recycler who can separate the metal from the rest of the mixed waste and use this as fuel to create energy. So we're exploring different options of what other things that we can do with this waste. Can we do disassembly with these pens? We really feel like the advantage is that we have this very unique, very pure waste stream. Thanks very much. So next slide, please. So what's the impact? In this past year, we've worked with the Clean Technology Center in Cork and Clearstream Solutions and the EPA to really determine what is our carbon impact. So what we're seeing is that it really saves plastic from going to landfill, water that we use in the creation of plastic. So actually more water is used to create new bins than what we use in our washing system. And then carbon emissions from the creation, transport, and the disposal of our bins. So we've calculated that by cleaning and reusing 1,000 sharps bins a year, we can avoid 15.3 metric tons of CO2. So that's approximately the equivalent of 9 round trips from London to New York. So again, our unique value proposition, just kind of in summary, is that through the use of our device, the HealthBeacon Smart Sharps Bin, we can help our patients to manage their medication, improve their health outcomes, and then we can take their waste and turn it into a valuable healthcare record, as well as helping them to dispose of their used injections in this safe and more sustainable manner. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marion. I have a question on the disposal. So you're looking at, you've got a material that's a combination of sterilized plastic and metal, correct?
That's
and
correct,
then the
yes.
metal, is the metal getting pulled out then and recycled? It's just the plastic?
That's correct. So at the moment in Ireland, we have an advanced recycler that's working with us that can pull the metal out and separate that. And here in Europe, it's very common to use the rest of the mixed materials as waste to energy. We're still exploring the best options for us in Florida. So if anyone has exciting recycling options that they want to talk to us about, please let me know. But yeah, that's the plan for the moment, is to continue to do the same thing in the US.
Do you know what primary polymers are from the plastic that so people can maybe help find an alternative to incineration?
Yeah, I don't have that off the top of my head, but because it depends on the injection device, it depends on the actual waste that's gone through. And like I said, what we do is we separate it by type of waste, by drug, and by company. So really, one pharma company could say, well, this is the exact components of our injection waste, and that way we would know exactly what it was. But it kind of depends on whether it's an auto injector or regular needles and syringes.
Yeah, this is where the industry could really help each other by working together on getting monomaterials, because if they're all the same material, it's a lot easier to find an alternative way to, recycle it, truly recycle it.
Yeah, I fully agree.
Yeah, great, good information. I am looking at the Q&A and we have a couple of questions. So Tim asks, where is your processing facility?
Oh, we have one in Dublin, Ireland, and like I said, we're opening one in Orlando, Florida.
And that's like next week or very soon, right?
That is on Sunday.
Keeping you very busy.
I am very busy, yes.
Okay, and then Kristen is asking, you mentioned that the Smart Sharp Bin has FDA approval. What is it approved as?
It's a medical device.
So it's approved as a medical device.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Well, those are the only two questions I see. So thank you very much, Marion, and we will move on to our next speaker, and stick around for any other questions that might arise, of course. And now we're going to turn it over to Cedric Geisel with Johnson & Johnson, and he's going to talk about their Sharps innovations, mailback of individual devices, and full circularity of materials with envelope and disassembly waste. We'll turn it over to you, Cedric. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Heidi. So I will actually speak to you about a very adjacent problem to what we just heard about. So we are one of the biggest healthcare companies on the planet. That also means we have a responsibility here. And what we're really trying to do is designing for our patients and the planet. You want to go next? So the big challenge, and this was already talked about, is we put all of these devices out there. They're all needle safe in themselves, but they're used at home. They end up in municipal waste. They end up in incineration in the best case, but they could really end up also in landfill in the worst case. But all of that material is actually lost to us. It's really kind of, it goes somewhere, it's uncontrolled, and we really kind of want to avoid that. So our materials are made from non-renewable materials, and they're not recycled. And as such, that has really a big negative impact on the environmental health. And we would really want to create as much as small as possible footprint with that. And also, we can see more and more in Europe that this really affects the user perception of our products. So we want to also really help be a beacon for the industry to actually show that this could be done differently. Want to go next? So typically what people know have out there are kind of the big unwieldy red containers. We used to have that in the US till last year. It's a 2-gallon container. No one really wants that in their home. It's a constant reminder of someone's disease. It's not really kind of a nice thing you want to have in your living room. And so this was really kind of what we started out with. It's a program that has been around for quite some time, and we had actually launched it in 2009. You got the container, you signed up, got the container, then you filled it up within 2 to 10 years, and you sent it back to us as kind of our incinerations, to our incineration site. You want to go next? So we really were not satisfied at all with that. It was really something that we said, this cannot be the solution. So we really kind of went back and said, what if we actually started designing something from scratch? What is really a great experience for our customers? How can we actually enable circularity while also really taking into account what our patients really need in their day-to-day lives? So the whole program has actually consists out of 4 main pillars. So collection, of course, is the main enabler of this. And for collection, this has been really something that is very innovative. We're not aware of any other pharmaceutical company doing this. We're actually have approval from the US Department of Transport to collect our needle-safe devices in envelopes that are picked up by the US Postal Service in your home. So the way this system works is you sign up, you get an envelope, you put your device in after use. Those are patients that are typically injecting themselves somewhere between 2 weeks and 12 weeks injection intervals. And once you have actually put it into the mail, a signal is produced to us that you will need another envelope for you to replace for your next injection. That also works as a constant reminder. Kind of, it comes prior to your injection. The material does not stay in your home for very long times, which it also makes it safer. There are no contact of kits and so on, and we're working in the US with the US Postal Service as a partner. From that point onwards, we're actually working on the next step that is then taking these materials, disassembling them, recycling them, and repurposing those materials. And I'll come to that in the next slide. But what this really gives us is safe and convenient disposal from home. This really gives you something that is very, very simple. There is no filling forms in triplicate. It's really just, I get the envelope, I put my device in, I close the envelope, I put it into my mailbox and the US Postal Service, and we do the rest. This really enables circularity. This is the first time that we actually get our product back. We can make sure that it's only our product. We're actually going to work in the future. Our ambition is that we are going to onboard more and more of the industry on this program, and it really creates a recurring touch point that also helps with adherence and persistency. Want to go next? So the place where we are at right now is actually what we call phase 1. So we have the collection established in the US and Switzerland. We're actually going to launch in 6 more markets this year in Europe. We have an ambition to launch continuously in 10 markets a year during the next few years, also expanding to Asia Pacific and other regions with this program, because we feel it's very well, it really works very well for people, and it's something that we feel very strongly about. The next step, phase 2, is actually something that is going to happen over the next 2 to 3 years. We'll actually establish all of the infrastructure to have automated disassembly. So we already have developed actually the disassembly technology so that we can do large scale, fully industrialized disassembly of hundreds of thousands of units or even millions of pens a year. That will then go into material recycling, and our ambition together with our partners is actually to be able to launch the first circular pharmaceutical self-injectable device within a few years' time. And we actually also work with a lot of other partners across the industry to onboard more and more people, more and more companies to join us in this effort to really make this something that is a standard for this industry, and to really start addressing the things that Heidi actually also showed in the beginning. Go to last slide, please. So I'll leave you with this. It's kind of how we think about this. And it's definitely like that. Tomorrow is ours to build, and we can only do it if we work together.
Thank you so much, Cedric. If you have any questions for Cedric, go ahead and type them into the Q&A. We are not using the chat today, but we'd be happy to take any questions. And I just want to say to Cedric how much I appreciate that a large company like Johnson & Johnson is working so hard on having a take-back program that's easy for the customer and properly handling these materials. It means a lot, and hopefully it will really push the rest of the industry in that direction. And seeing no further questions, oh, there's Kristen. She's got a question. Where will the envelopes be available? I think you said they were getting mailed to people, correct? Or with the product?
Yeah, correct. So you can actually sign up on our product pages. We are actually making it easier. Starting in a month's time, we actually have a central sign-up site. The envelopes will be delivered anywhere in the US. So we're serving all 52 states. And we are starting to serve more and more of the world with this program.
Fantastic. We're so glad to hear that. Can't come soon enough, all these good solutions. Thank you again. And please again, stay around. We might have more questions for you.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. I'm always impressed with people who can do webinars and things in a second language. So Sarah Hansen with UltiMed is here, and she's going to be talking about the UltiMed Mailback All-in-One solution. And UltiMed is a US-based company out of Minnesota, and again, was one of our founding board members at the National Stewardship Action Council, our sister organization. So Sarah, go ahead, and we'll look forward to hearing the latest.
Thank you, Heidi, and thank you for your initiative to host this very informative webinar. We appreciate the opportunity to be a sponsor. As you mentioned, we have a long relationship, and I'm going to highlight some of the history of innovation that UltiMed has had in safe sharps disposal. My name is Sarah Hansen. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Marketing at UltiMed. And really to frame our discussion, I want to give you a little bit of history about UltiMed because it is pertinent, and then we will move into some innovative solutions that we have for safe sharps disposal. Victoria, if we could go to the next slide. So UltiMed, as Heidi highlighted, is a US-based company. Our mission is really to improve the lives of our customers and communities, and we are specifically focused in the area of diabetes, and diabetes for people and also diabetes for pets. So we make premium quality injection devices, primarily for the delivery of insulin, but also for other medications that may be injected via a pen that requires a pen needle. We have long been committed to the issue of safe sharps disposal. Heidi mentioned one of our founders who long ago was very visionary in saying, you know, if we're going to manufacture these devices, we should also ensure that they get disposed of safely. And so we invented the UltiGuard Safe Pack. Next year will be the 20-year anniversary of the introduction of this device. And I want to teach you a little bit more about the device here in a moment. We are a leader in safe sharps disposal, and we concentrate in the North American market. Next slide. So just to give you a snapshot of UltiMed, we have had 30 years of innovation, and we are a global leader in safe sharps disposal. We do have the only all-in-one solution focused on safe dispensing and safe disposal of sharps, and that's in our UltiGuard Safe Pack line. We have 2 manufacturing sites. We are very proud that we produce pen needles in the United States, and we are the only pen needle manufacturer that produces in the US. We also have a manufacturing site abroad, and these 2 sites allow us to have the scalability and the flexibility, which everyone here will appreciate given recent world events and supply chain challenges. So really working on the flexibility of ensuring the supply chain. We focus in 3 categories with a comprehensive portfolio of injection devices: human diabetes, pet diabetes, and both of those are really for in-home injections. And then we have a portfolio of safety and specialty syringes that are used in a clinical environment. Again, recognizing that we are working with North American, really US as our focus, we support 2 languages. We are the only brand in the US that offers bilingual packaging and bilingual educational resources to our customers, and the languages we support are English and Spanish. Our brands, we market under the brand of UltiCare, UltiCare VetRx, and then UltiGuard Safe Pack. So let's turn our attention really to the focus on safe sharps disposal, which is the primary reason for this webinar. Next slide, please. I hope that many of you are already familiar with UltiGuard Safe Pack, but in case you aren't, I wanted to highlight this innovation to you and just show you about this device and highlight some of the things that other speakers have also mentioned. One of the first things you may notice about UltiGuard Safe Pack is the color. This is a FDA cleared sharps container made in this nice discreet color versus the traditional red of a sharps container, because this is used in a patient's home. And as was mentioned, no one wants a red sharps container screaming at them from their kitchen or bathroom counter, wherever you might keep your pen needles. This device was also designed specifically for people with diabetes and issues that they may face. So one thing you will notice, first of all, is you can see it's very easy to hold in the palm of the hand. You will also notice this large wheel on the side, made purposefully large and easy to grip, because many people with diabetes end up with this dexterity issues as a comorbidity with their disease. People also end up with vision issues when they have diabetes for a long time. So we designed the top part of this container. You'll see this bright red area where the pen needle is disposed of. And then when this wheel turns, the pen needle falls down. So we talk about this as pop, drop, and roll. Of course, we are working with patients or with consumers. So we put this into consumer facing terminology, where you pop the pen needle from the lower chamber, you take your injection, and then you drop the pen needle on the top of the container, roll the wheel, and the used pen needle is safely contained in UltiGuard Safe Pack. I will also mention that we have UltiGuard Safe Pack also in a syringe version. This particular version, you'll see the cute paw print here, is for our animal health customers, for our dogs and cats with diabetes and their owners that give them daily injections of insulin. Next slide, please. So as we've discussed, this issue of safe sharps disposal has been around for a long time. And when we talk to our retail customers, our pharmacy customers, we talk to them about how people with diabetes in particular don't get trained on what to do with their used sharps. And often they're just tossed in the trash. And as consumers, I think most of us, when we roll our trash to the curb, we don't think about what happens next. Now, this audience that's on this webinar today, of course, is thinking about what happens next to the trash. But for the typical consumer, you roll your trash can to the curb and you forget about it. However, we know that improperly disposed sharps cause issues all the way through the environmental waste stream. And Heidi highlighted very well some of the issues that happen as the trash is sorted with those used sharps. What we're experiencing now is that home generated sharps are being thought of more as medical waste, and that there are new regulations in some states and cities that really call for a mail-back disposal solution to deal with the used sharps. Now, I know there were some questions earlier about SB 212 in California, and California is certainly leading the way in the mail-back options for home-generated sharps. Next slide, please. So what UltiMed has done to further innovate in safe sharps disposal is developed a 3-in-1 mail-back sharps container and disposal kit. And we call it 3-in-1 because it contains your injection device, either your pen needle or your syringe. It contains the FDA cleared sharps container. And then it contains all the materials needed to safely ship this medical waste to a medical waste facility. We provide the various packaging components, and we provide prepaid postage in our solution so that it's very easy for a patient or for a consumer to utilize this product and then return it for proper disposal. So it's no additional cost to the patient and has the full solution. In the US, pen needles and syringes are covered by insurance most typically, and so this product is also covered by insurance. We developed a full portfolio of syringe sizes and pen needle sizes to meet consumer needs, and introduced full bilingual packaging within this solution. Another important thing to note is the way that patients get their pen needles and syringes. Most of those are received at the pharmacy and dispensed with a prescription. So by having this full kit, the 3-in-1 kit, it also means no change in pharmacy workflow. The pharmacist simply orders the product from the distributor. It's housed on the pharmacy shelf, and when a prescription arrives with the patient, then they dispense the product just like they would what has traditionally been a box of pen needles. So I can describe this and go on, but probably the best way to see it is in action in the video. So Victoria, could we please go to the video? So you can see in that video how UltiGuard Safe Pack works as a product and as the
Get outside and
foundation.
enjoy this beautiful weather and our beautiful desert, but there's a lot of things that we need to think about
I think you
before we
need to,
do that. And
Yeah.
safety obviously is our main priority out here.
Sorry, sometimes these videos go automatically into something else.
It's no problem. So, you can see from the video then how UltiGuard Safe Pack works in dispensing the pen needles, then safely disposing of them. And then with the addition of the mail-back materials, gives the consumer that very easy and convenient full solution. This is mailed back, as others have mentioned, through the USPS and then sent to a medical waste facility. All postage prepaid, again, at no additional cost to the consumer. Okay, so we go back to the slides. So one of the things that I mentioned is that a lot of consumers just aren't taught what to do with their used pen needles and used syringes. And so we have, in addition to our product initiative and innovation, we have also put together a new education and support tool at the URL disposemyneedles.com. This is a bilingual website that has tools and materials both for healthcare providers, including pharmacists and pharmacy technicians and patients. For the pharmacy, there are educational materials and signage that they can request from us. Consumers can request any replacement materials should they accidentally throw away some of their packaging or misplace something. We have instructional guides, videos, sharps disposal resources, and also for our pharmacists, all the ways to order our product. We also have put together a dedicated toll-free number, 1-844-8-SHARPS. And this phone line is, of course, available in English, but then also we have added a translation service so that we can handle all the various languages from consumers in their native language. Our next innovation in our website and all of those tools will also be to add additional languages and some translation service because we really want this material. It's very important materials and information to be available to as many people as possible. Overall, we'll have over 100 languages supported once we are complete with the website and the phone service. Next slide. One of the tools that I wanted to highlight, because this is available publicly on our Dispose Our Needles website and also on our corporate website, is we do invest in keeping up with the information on the disposal guidelines by state. This is a very valuable resource for our pharmacists in particular, also for our veterinarians when they are looking at how to dispose of needles safely and how to counsel and educate their patients. This is available in English and Spanish, and I wanted to highlight it here for everyone on the webinar in case that is a resource that you would be interested in. It is there on our website. Okay, so next slide, just to wrap up, I would just like to say, UltiMed's very proud of our 30-year history in high quality injection devices and also being an innovator and a leader in safe sharps disposal. We believe we're really setting a new standard for how sharps should be disposed of with our new and only 3-in-1 kit. Our next area of innovation is to take our dispense and dispose technology and be partnering with pharmaceutical companies on additional dispense and dispose solutions where we combine pharmaceuticals, sharps, and then the full dispense and dispose through the safe medical waste disposal. I welcome your questions and thank you for your time and interest. And once again, thank you, Heidi, for putting this together.
Oh, thank you, Sarah, and to UltiMed, everyone there who's been working for so long to try and get attention on the issue of safe needle disposal and providing a solution for so long that I really hope more companies will take advantage of. That container I have been walking around with for a decade, showing people how it's so simple. It's the repurposing of the packaging. Your packaging is the return container, and it makes total sense. And I love it. And that somebody did ask the question about, are there barriers to using mail back? And before I let you tackle that or any of the other speakers, to me, that is the most convenient thing, is to be able to actually simply put it in the mail. And I know there's legal ways to do that and safe ways to do that. So is there anything else you'd like to add?
Heidi, I think you're exactly right. I mean, when you look at the end consumer, the end patient, it's very, very convenient, right? And it should be, because then people are more apt to do it. I would say the barriers are really in the regulatory hurdles. I mean, we have to get certifications and work with many different agencies. I mean, many people have mentioned USPS already, and they're certainly, key in the mail back. But as you mentioned, there are ways to do it. There's ways to safely do it. And we believe it's the right solution for the consumers, and then, of course, for medical waste disposal overall.
Yeah, I know. I've talked to a lot of patients, and when we're out in the field, people say mail back is preferred. And in California, when we were passing SB 212, which I'll talk about at the end, the bill that did safe medicine and needle disposal, but allowed the companies and the products to be separated into two separate stewardship programs, the sharps manufacturers really wanted this to be a mail back program. And my concern with that was, I wanted to make sure everybody who got a needle did not go home without a container. And so in the law, we required that the container be provided when the needles were provided. And of course, you've solved that long ago with your product, because the container is the return container, which is, to me, the ultimate solution. And so I've always loved this product and thought, others, I didn't understand why they weren't doing the same thing and reducing packaging and making sure it was getting back to them. So we do have one more question from Carlos. Are any of you working with HHW facilities as far as the management, disposal, and reimbursement? If so, what are the steps to connect with you? And so I'll let you answer that. I think also I saw maybe, Cedric, did you want to say something to the last question? Did I roll over you there? I didn't mean to. Looks like he's gone offline. Okay.
Yes, Heidi. So I think what's also important to say is we've been kind of the first ones to actually even get an exemption from being sharps as for the purpose of collection. And I think that also makes it much, much easier for people to use these systems. Before, with the red container, with the filling forms in triplicate and all of the declaration, this has been very inconvenient for people. And I think our responsibility there is also really to make this as convenient as possible, because in the end, our main competitor is not so much that there is something else out there. It's probably that it's very close to the waste bin in my kitchen or in my bathroom.
Yeah, I totally agree. And we've always said there's always the 80-20 rule. There's always, 20% of the people are more curmudgeon-y and won't really follow much direction. But if we make it free and very convenient, we can even get them to do the right thing. And hopefully, I also want to help raise awareness about how dangerous this is for our waste management workers. And it's costing us all a lot of money, because when they have to stop the line and all that, some of these facilities I've heard are on average stopping the line 5 to 6 times a day because of needles being on the line. There's so many conditions that require needles now. And as you said, people aren't being told the proper information. I had one friend whose daughter became diabetic and was told by the instructor that came to their house and explained how to manage her condition that she should take the needle and wrap it in tissue and throw it in the trash. That was the actual instructions that people were getting. So we have a lot of work to do all the way up and down the supply chain here in the education chain. But when Carlos talks about HHW, he's from Elk Grove, so he's from California, where we have this law where one of the things we required in the bill, I said, that's fine, you can do mail back, but under these conditions. One, the container is provided at point of sale. And two, if this is not convenient and we are not getting them back and they show up at a public hazardous waste facility, you will pay for that. Because that's the incentive to me, to make sure you're doing a great job of making this convenient and easy and free for people. And the industry said, nope. And they walked away from the table for several days. I thought the bill was dead. And then they came back and said, okay. So we have this reimbursement requirement in the bill that says that local governments with needles need to get paid for those needles when the system is failing enough that people still go to all the way out of their way to go to a household hazardous waste facility during certain hours to drop them off. I'm not sure that we're there yet, Carlos, as far as the program being implemented. I don't know if the stewardship programs, I think they're all conditionally approved right now and not fully approved by the state of California. And we're gonna give you the link to the website at CalRecycle. And if anybody's from CalRecycle on or can text me, please let me know if that's different. But I don't think at this point, we're very close to getting to the place where you will be able to get your reimbursement, and I can follow up and get back to you on that. Okay, so I will follow up with Carlos afterwards. So with that, we're going to head and turn it over now to Manuel Huber with Alliance to Zero. So I'm going to let him explain this association and what they're working on in Europe. Welcome. Is he there? Hello? There he is. Manuel? Uh-oh, is his sound not working? Looks like he's trying to. There you are. Can you be a little bit louder, I think?
Okay, I'm sorry for that. Yeah, thank you, Heidi. And I'm very pleased to introduce you the Alliance to Zero in the name of this alliance. So my name is Manuel, and I'm one of the committee members of the Alliance. The Alliance to Zero is a fairly new non-profit association. We founded the Alliance about a year ago, so in June last year. And what we basically want to do is to enable a net zero pharma product. And in a first step, we're focusing on especially auto injectors. Next slide, please. So the Alliance to Zero collaborates on a shared vision, and this shared vision is that we help the pharma sector to do a transition and get a net zero emission product, which basically goes in line with the goal of the Paris Climate Agreement, which was made in 2015. So already 7 years ago. To actually get to the result which we want to achieve, we have a roadmap, and the roadmap is roughly shown here. So in a short term, we want to get the industry together, so building up a network. And then within the companies, we want to reduce our GHG emissions in a first step. Then in a midterm, we want to come up with transparent KPIs, because when we talk about net zero products and the environment, there are many different opinions and views out there, and it's very important that we have the same language and the same understanding within the industry, and that we can set the benchmark. Also in a midterm, we want to have a net zero product offering, and then in a long term, which is in 2030, we want to have the first net zero product actually on the market together with one of our customers or multiple customers. Next slide, please. So, but who actually is the Alliance to Zero? So the Alliance to Zero consists out of 8 companies, and those 8 companies, they represent the value chain of a pharmaceutical product. So we have in the primary packaging and device components, the company Stettweiler. They do rubber components. We have UltiMed, who is a manufacturer of auto injectors, and then also Schott, which is a glass manufacturer for example, syringes or vials. In the assembly and labeling field, we have a Haro Höfliger, which does assembly equipment, so basically capital goods, machines. We have a Schreiner Medifarm, which does produce labels, and then we have Schar, which acts as a CMO in the assembly and labeling, but also in the secondary packaging field. Also in the secondary packaging field, we have a Korber, which provides folding box cartons and also capital goods, the cartoners. And then we have at the end of life with the collection of the sharp waste HealthBeacon. So that's what Marion introduced you earlier. Next slide, please. So in the last or in the first year, we have been working in different working groups, and one working group was together with a third-party subject matter expert working on a product carbon footprint and also a guideline. Next slide, please. So what we actually did, we all 8 companies together with the subject matter expert created this guideline. And so this was then basically our baseline to calculate the first pilot device as a cross industry life cycle assessment. And this was a very exciting calculation, even though it was very hard to gather all the information from the different life cycle steps. But finally, we made it together, and I would like to present you the result on the next slide. Next slide, please. So in this case, the outcome of the product life cycle assessment shows the emission of one auto injector, including its packaging needed for distribution. So I can give you some more insights. The auto injector is a 1 ml UltiMed auto injector, and then for the packaging we use only paperboard secondary packaging, and we also included the literature into the calculation. And so you see on this pie chart very nicely split up that the overall 782 grams CO2 equivalent for one product can be split into different categories. So we have, for example, the syringe, we have the rubber components, we have as a large portion the device parts. So those are the ones, the plastic ones, the shells, and the mechanism inside. Then we have the assembly, which is basically the production, so getting the device together, labeling, packaging, and then once it goes out to the pharmaceutical, to the pharma, retail, these are fairly small portions, and then the user is the part which the patient picks up the device and then disposes the device. So this is one view of the result, but I would like to do a little bit a different view. And can we go to the next slide, please? So on this slide, you see the same 782 grams for one auto injector, including the packaging, but just split up a little different. So we have here all the amount that counts into the product itself, so into all the components and the waste at the end. So, and you can see that this amount is more than 50%, and we can fairly state that the linearity of the supply chain makes up more than 50% of the actual device. And for the Alliance, this is very important, because when we talk about linearity, we definitely see that there needs to be a change. And so this change, we also heard from Cedric and Heidi at the beginning, as well as Marion, so that we go into a more circular approach. On the left side, on the pictures, you see the device, which we actually calculated, and with the components to it. Next slide, please. So now talking about the end of life challenges, which, next slide, please. Brings us to the basically these three categories or stages. So the today's situation, and we have heard many experts already. I mean, the use of the device, and then it's classified as hazard waste, and it ends up everywhere. In this picture we show landfill incineration, but you even better know that than I, because you're there, the experts. But we see really change drivers, and so we see the upcoming regulations. We talked about the extended producer responsibilities, but then we also see the patient expectations, and the patients, they're talking about sustainability. They want to know where those products are maybe going to end up, and who gets maybe hurt because of it. And then we also have, on the other hand, the shareholder ratings, maybe talking about the impact investments. So we see investors going with solutions there are at the end more sustainable, and that's why we say the future is circular. So we have the raw material coming in, the device production, which basically the Alliance to Zero represents to a big part, but then we have the distribution and use and end of life together with HealthBeacon, and we see that we have to close this loop, and we have to reuse or repurpose the products the pharmaceutical companies sell. But we also see that on the CO2 calculation, this is going to help to get us down to our ambitions, which is the net zero product offering. Next slide, please. So as stated at the beginning, so we are going from this linear approach with what we see as of today, more into the circular approach, and that's why the Alliance to Zero is actually also designed to do this transition and to help our customers, the pharma customers, the medical device industry to close this loop. And we have set up different working groups. So procurement is one of them. Then we have machinery and processes. We have the end of life working group. But then we also have corporations with pharma companies, with academia, and with experts. And two corporations I can highlight here is that we work, for instance, with RightTech. That's a recycling and circularity company, and then also with TU Delft, a university in the Netherlands. So yeah, we try to go out and get this network established, and work with all the subject matter experts. Next slide, please. This brings me already to the end. As I said, the Alliance to Zero is still fairly young, a little bit more than 1 year old, but we did some good first steps. The product carbon footprint guideline we established. We did the first cross-industry life cycle calculation assessment. And we already see that we are an access point for multi-stakeholders. And we believe that with a strong partnership, we can really drive towards the zero or net zero product, and that we can realize that with the circular economy together with the pharma and medtech industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Manuel. This is a very exciting collaboration and very hopeful. And we wish you all the success in the world at getting there as quickly as possible. I'm sure everybody's feeling the climate changes. We had here in California a heat dome and hit an all-time high of 116 degrees. And our forests are on fire up and down the whole West Coast, including all the way to Montana, and now even in Canada. So we are out of time, got to move, and it's exciting to see companies working together to achieve zero emissions. So thank you again for all your hard work. And I don't see any questions in the chat about this. I would encourage our US side of the house. I don't know if they can join Manuel. Can the US companies join this group, or have they joined this group, or are they doing their own?
We're still elaborating and looking how we're gonna move forward, since we're 8 companies and still fairly young. We kind of still in the phase where we sort out things, but we're definitely open to new members. But it's at the time being, we're not pushing that too much right now, I'd say, yeah.
Well, I think leading by example could be a great example for the US side. So great. Thank you so much for all that. So now we'll go ahead and turn it over to our friend Peter Dahab with Pulumina, who's working on an innovative product. We've talked mostly about sharps, and there's not a whole lot of innovation on the medicine side, unless they make them compostable, which some people have talked about, which I have no idea how that would work with all the chemicals. It's the packaging. And in the SB 54 bill that we just passed in California, the circular economy bill on packaging, pharmaceutical medication and pharmaceutical drugs are exempt from the packaging rule. And that lobby is very powerful. I don't necessarily agree with that, but sometimes you do what you have to do to get things done and bills passed. So I am excited that we ran into Peter, because he is working on getting away from those really non-recyclable and contaminating plastic containers. So I will turn it over now to Peter for an innovation and drug container prescription bottles. Turn over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Heidi. And I really appreciate the opportunity to present at the webinar today, and both your and Victoria's help getting prepared for the conversations today. So my name is Peter Dahab. I'm the co-founder of Pulumina. We are based here in the San Francisco Bay Area, and still pretty young. We launched the company back in 2020. Abe Matar, who's also a co-founder of Pulumina, he's also on the call with us today. And what we're going to talk through is just what Heidi just mentioned, our solution to what we think is honestly one of the largest contributors to the plastic waste, single-use plastic waste crisis, and that's the plastic prescription bottle. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So, for those on this call, I'm sure a lot of this it's in our everyday lives, just, really the extent to where, plastic pollution is everywhere. And I think we're at the point, and we've been there for a little while now, where it's really turned into the world's most hated waste. It's a competition between CO2 gas emissions and plastic, depending on the month of the year. But, really what we're seeing is, the amount of plastic waste that's filling our cities, landfills, waterways, and oceans. It's becoming overwhelming, and we've all seen a lot of the statistics on how much plastic is in the oceans, what it's doing to our food system. A lot of us, and what we've already talked about in some of the different conversations today, is really the amount of plastic waste that's piling up in our landfills. There's a lot of effort and energy and really good programs and movements that's really focused on trying to tackle single-use plastic waste. Industries are transforming how they do business. We're seeing it within our daily use items like plastic bags, cups, straws. So not just industries and companies. Obviously, there's tremendous nonprofits like NSAC that's really helping drive a lot of this change. But I think what we feel is that there's still a lot more that we can do. And what our goal is to help play a role in helping take more action where more action can be taken. Next slide, please. So one of the things I thought was interesting, right? So, even with all the momentum and energy and programs and everything that we are hearing about today, and I've heard about that's really trying to tackle single-use plastic waste, unfortunately, we're still trending in the wrong direction. So with the US, we only represent about 4% of the world's population, but we do produce, almost 3x of our population in terms of the amount of waste that we produce. About like 12% of the global solid waste comes from the US. And when we think about, for those countries, especially that's tracking recycling rates, we're unfortunately down towards the bottom. And this is, looking at probably the past 6 years worth of data. So, as I mentioned before, even with everything that we're doing, there's still a lot of opportunity, one, to learn from what other countries are doing, and two, to really identify those other programs in areas that maybe are not focused today. That could be quick wins. It can help us really tackle some of the recycling issues that we're having. One of the second bullet point is really around some recent studies. Our recent study that was done that even with the estimates that we initially did, that when they took a closer look at it, the recycling rate is actually closer to half of what we thought it was. And I think another part of the problem is, even with all the programs and effort, our production and use of plastic is outpacing our ability to recycle it. And when you combine that with, global economic factors to where, we can't ship out as much of our plastic and other waste material to other countries to process for us, it's actually trending in the wrong direction. So I'm confident that with all the programs and all the energy and everything that everyone is doing, especially with a lot of the great work that Heidi and team is doing, we'll start to trend back in the right direction. But, I just thought that this was interesting, that this isn't the direction that we want to be trending to. Next slide, please. So here's some good news, right? So I think Heidi already talked a lot about SB 54 and really what that's going to do for the state of California in terms of tackling plastic packaging and the reduction requirements there, both at the corporate level and across industries. Unfortunately, as Heidi mentioned, pharma tends to get a little bit off the hook and they're exempt. But again, we feel that we're bringing a solution that we'll talk about here in a little bit that could be widely accepted and an easy change that can actually help pharma become more of an active participant in one of these areas when it comes to plastic recycling. And then the other, again, so a lot of good news this year, a lot of programs, state and governments are getting involved. Earlier this year, this was back in March. So the United Nations, it was close to 200 countries, about 175. They signed a treaty. They signed a treaty that they're going to, move forward to come up with a pact and a plan to end plastic pollution. Aggressive goal to have that plan and treaty signed by 2024. But again, it's just the acknowledgement that we need to take action and something needs to be done. And in fact, at that forum, they refer to plastic as an epidemic. So a lot of good momentum, a lot of movement happening. And I'm confident that we're going to start trending in the right direction when it comes to plastic waste, not just here in California and the US, but across the world. And next slide, please. So we've talked a little bit about the plastic prescription bottle, and I'm sure most of you on this call, especially within the pharma and medical industries, we're all well aware of the volume of prescriptions that the US has, for the majority, for the country, for all of Americans here. And this number has actually gone up since the last time we've looked at it, but just going back to a couple of years ago, there's over 6 billion prescriptions filled in the US, and that number will grow year over year. And I think what we're seeing, and what we all know, I think the majority of us here on this call would say that, hey, there's at least some level of prescription medication that we all take for whatever reason. The majority of us are all familiar with the amber prescription plastic bottles, right? It's the orange one that we get from our local pharmacy, our retail pharmacies. The issue with these plastic bottles is the type of plastic that it's made out of is called polypropylene, or PP. It actually has a very low recycle rate, about 3%. And, California here is a little bit different, but I think when we look nationwide, a lot of curbside programs, the blue bin or whatever bin that you put out on the curb once a week, actually can't process these. They can't recycle. By the time they get to the facility, it actually, filters through the recycling trommel. So I think there's a huge opportunity when we think about, where are areas where plastic is just getting into our landfills and oceans, that the prescription bottle is actually one of the larger items that's out there in terms of volume that we're seeing, and contributing to our plastic waste crisis. I think the other thing just to mention is, this particular bottle has been in use for over 50 years now. I think it was in the early 70s initially when they introduced the plastic prescription bottle. And really not much has changed. I mean, in terms of like the cap and child resistant caps, and there has been some improvements, but in terms of material, the function and form of it, not much has changed. And we saw a huge opportunity to do something different and bring change to something that really hasn't changed much over the last half decade or half century. Next slide, please. So now to introduce Illumina and our mission, right? So as Heidi mentioned, we're bringing a more environmentally friendly and infinitely recyclable aluminum alternative to the plastic pill bottle. Our vision and approach is it's really a simple one-to-one switch from the plastic bottles that are used today. It conforms to all of the pharmacy filling and labeling and current operation processes that would happen within the pharmacy setting. And what we're trying to do is do our part to join the fight against the plastic crisis by reducing landfill waste and ocean contamination. And one of the reasons why we're here today is we're really looking to partner with organizations and leaders with common missions and programs and sustainability initiatives to drive change that will positively impact our environment. Next slide, please. So why aluminum? We've talked a little bit earlier about the circular economy. So aluminum is actually, from a materials and packaging perspective, one of the best options within the circular economy. Our aluminum in our bottle, it's produced here in the US. It's a closed loop cycle and it's infinitely recyclable. When aluminum compared to plastic in terms of recycle rates, it's recycled at over 20 times the rate of plastic. And interestingly enough, about 75% of all aluminum ever manufactured is actually still in our packaging ecosystem today, just given the infinite recyclability and how it's transformed into new aluminum, which then goes into new packaging materials, whereas plastic does not, right? Or at least the plastic prescription bottle does not, given the recyclability rate. The other thing to mention is, recycled aluminum actually takes way less energy to turn into new aluminum material. So it takes about 95% less energy than to produce new aluminum material. Next slide, please. So a little bit more about our bottle. So when we went out to set, the design and manufacture of this bottle, we spent a good year doing a lot of R&D and testing. So here's the bottle itself. It's made out of very sturdy, strong aluminum material, which, if you squeeze it, can't really bend. So it protects any pill form or pill medication. It does have the child resistant, twist cap. So it functions in terms of how a normal prescription bottle you expect to work. It has gone through several testing programs, so it's actually certified to meet USB 42 NF37, and the specific tests are 661.2 and 671. It also is FDA compliant. It has a BPA-free liner. So the actual material in the liner of the bottle is widely used today for beverage products, for pharmaceutical products that are like spray applications, like you might have some kind of antibacterial spray. So in terms of the aluminum itself, the liner, we are just bringing it to market in a different form factor, as well as making sure that we can use it with the child-resistant cap and bringing it to the pharmaceutical industry so that we can dispense pharmaceutical medications in it. The other unique thing about our product that I wanted to share is, as we think about, the pharmacy industry, especially on the retail side, it provides a branding and customization opportunity. So as I mentioned, the bottles are manufactured here in the US. We could manufacture the bottle with any color. We can put on any logo. So our logo is here on the bottom. When we think about either hospital organizations or clinics or retail pharmacies, in terms of like the color, the logo, the brand, both on the bottle and on the cap, fully customizable. And I think the other important thing to note is, everything's 100% here made in the US. Next slide, please. So one of the reasons why we're here today, and then as we continue to have conversations, across industry leaders, especially within pharmacy operations, hospital operations, retail pharmacies, we'd love to partner with you. And I think the best experience we can give individuals and potential partners is, getting the bottle in their hands to see, A, how does it look and feel? B, how does it work within our pharmacy setting, within our operations? We've done a couple of good pilots already. We're getting a lot of good patient feedback. So one of the things that we'd love to just share with the group here today is, we're looking to partner, and Heidi provided our contact information at the beginning, but we'd love to see if there's anyone open to, or, knows of anyone that we can maybe talk to initiate some pilot programs and start bringing our bottle to different pharmacies. And hopefully start taking the steps to eliminate the plastic, the plastic prescription bottle.
Cool.
That's it.
And there's your contact information again. So
Contact info.
thank you. And
Thank
I've
you
got,
so much for your time today. I appreciate it.
oh, of course. So glad you could be here. We've been wondering about these darn bottles for a long time. One of the things I know is in our industry, and I can't see my screen for some reason. So oh, there it is. The plastic, because it's so small, it misses a lot of the screens, is my understanding. Well, there's two problems. One is it's amber. Anytime you add a color, you're contaminating it to some degree and making it harder to recycle. The other part is that just simply the size of it is a problem, because to capture it gets very difficult on our systems. And so those two things combined have made it incredibly difficult to grab them. And as you said, our recycling rates are extremely low for polypropylene right now. So I have a couple of questions on this. One is, my understanding is that even where polypropylene is readily available, recycling is readily available, prescription vials aren't often accepted because recyclers can't ensure they are empty. Is that potentially an issue with aluminum bottles also? Now, my guess is that the answer is no, because metals have to be melted, and that would destroy any contamination. Plastics, the problem with plastics is they are like chemical absorbers, and they suck up everything that they touch, basically, and that has been a real problem for a lot of different chemicals, not just, any kind of drugs, but leave it to you, Peter, if you can answer that.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. And, ideally we want to partner with pharmacies to have the medicine disposal, which a lot of those programs are already in place. So ideally the bottle is already empty. So, there's a lot of programs in place to, how do you dispense of medication, unused medication? There's a lot of return back to pharmacies and they'll dispose of it for them. So we'd also like to work with pharmacies on what's a recyclable program for our bottles. But ideally, if it's an empty bottle, it can just be recycled along with any other aluminum can or other aluminum packaging that you would put in your recycle bin.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if, clearly we have to educate people. They cannot dispose in there. It's not legal. It's not safe. There's a bunch of reasons. If they're going to recycle a pill bottle, they cannot leave the pills in it. But there are some drugs that literally the dust can affect you. So I do understand the question, Elizabeth, and I'm not quite sure if we have the full answer, but I think that's an excellent thing to be thinking about as we all go through this and try to get to circularity. That's one of my big concerns about, recycled content, plastic. I don't worry about glass, aluminum, and other things, but high recycled content plastic, when we've got malathion containers out there with chasing arrows and people think it's recyclable, that absorbs those chemicals. And I don't want it in food grade anything. And I certainly don't want it in a baby bottle. And so I do worry about, these closed loop systems on plastics, and are we really protecting to make sure they're safe? And there's another question from Paul. How does central fill automation deal with this new container?
Okay, so Paul, if I think I understand the question, within a pharmacy setting that uses like automated filling where they have the bottles and it's automatically dispensing medication, it actually, given like the form factor and size and weight, it actually works the same exact way that a plastic prescription bottle would. So when we went out to design and manufacture the bottle, we looked at what's the most commonly used size. So this is a dram 30 size. And we actually did some testing within different pharmacy settings that actually both do the metal dispensing as well as asking them, hey, if you were to use this in your automatic filling station, would it work? Would it function the same? And the answer was yes. So hopefully that answers your question around centralized filling. So the standard bottles, there's different heights, widths. Usually the central filling stations accommodate multiple sizes. And we wanted to make sure that our bottle conformed to, the average size, and the most highest use was the most prescriptions are filled in that SD or that dram 30 size, which is what we're manufacturing.
Great, thank you. And then Raj asked, what is the cap made of?
No, great question. So unfortunately, there is not a fully metal or aluminum child-resistant safety cap available yet today. And that's something we're continuing to research ourselves and continue to look for other partners to provide an alternative. This particular cap, I don't know if you could see it, but it is a aluminum metal on the inside. So it's actually just a regular twist on cap. The exterior is plastic, which is a different plastic material that does have a higher recycle rate. So our goal is, we're addressing in terms of the total plastic, 85 to 90% of the problem. The benefit is that we do know that a lot of patients opt out of a child-resistant cap. So when you think about elderly folks that maybe don't want to have to do the push and turn, we do have a standard aluminum cap that's just more of like an easy twist. There are other options to where it could be like a flip cap, but those again are still more plastic based. Our product right now is addressing the bottle itself. We do feel we have a good solution to address part of the plastic problem that's created by the cap. And that's something that we're looking to continue to improve upon. This is, version 1 of our product. And as, the materials develop and we can turn to more of an aluminum based solution, that's absolutely something that we want to do.
The cap is still the problem for now, but that's something we're working on.
Correct.
Okay, very good. Very good. You're welcome, Raj. And thank you all for your questions. This is how we, learn. So with that, I think we'll keep moving since we're already at 10:35 and it's already been over an hour and a half. So I'm going to just keep moving on to just share a little bit about the policy side. So I helped pass the first, I was integral in passing the first producer responsibility ordinance in the US for safe medicine disposal. We did it, and believe it or not, 10 years ago, 2012. It was such a big deal. I could literally give speeches on this entire process, but it was so contentious that pharma did what they promised. They sued the county of Alameda, which is Oakland, city of Oakland in California, and claimed that there was a violation of the Commerce Clause, that it wasn't fair to make them internalize these costs. The petition, it was appealed all the way to the US Supreme Court. And in 2015, the US Supreme Court denied hearing their arguments. The Ninth Circuit did hear it in the appeals court, and it was literally made me cry, having all these very smart judges and people talking about producer responsibility and who's responsible, et cetera. You see the picture down there on the right. But it really did lay the groundwork for the nation that any county or any local government in this country that has the responsibility to protect public health has the right to make producers pay for the end of life of their products if they feel it's a public health and safety issue. And that was changing the rules of the road. That was the legal rules of the road change that I am very, very proud of. And I'm very proud of Alameda for leading the way on this. Next slide, please. And after Alameda, we had 13 other cities and counties, San Francisco being a city and a county, pass ordinances similar to Alameda's. Of course, I'd mentioned at the beginning that Santa Cruz was the first to add needles. So we thank Santa Cruz for their groundbreaking work. And then I went to Los Angeles County because I thought if we can get those 14 million people on this bandwagon, we're going to get a state bill. That's exactly what happened. After 6 hearings, public hearings, and then you can see me there testifying, and you can watch the video. We finally got to the point where pharma said, enough, let's just negotiate a state bill. And so we're very grateful for that. Next slide, please. I prefer that we not have to go fight this much to get there, but we did eventually get everybody on the same page. We got a 39-0 vote on something nobody thought we could even get in 2018 to pass the first needle and medicine take back program in the country, producers paying for everything. And that's our lobbying team and me when we just got the news over the TV that we got it done. Super excited about that. Next slide, please. And again, you know, you can see the pictures. This is why people were dumping medicines in the water. We are now finding that all the fish around the stormwater or the water treatment outfalls for about a mile are female, highly female, like over 90%, because they're being exposed to so many estrogen-like substances. There's lots of reasons for that. But there's a lot of drugs out there too, and the filter feeders are filling up with them, and we're eating, you know, filter feeders like oysters and so forth, and mussels. So there's a lot of reasons we want this back, and you can see that pile at the bottom of needles again. This is what human hands are picking up off sort lines in the United States. It's absolutely wrong. It is terrible. We should be making this a lot easier for people to recycle and collect these things back and manage them properly, just if nothing else for the safety of our workers. So the key provisions of the bill were that the producers have to form a producer responsibility organization that is a not-for-profit 501c3. There's 19 or so different kinds of nonprofits. This one is for public benefit. They have to benefit the public. There has to be one medication bin for every 50,000 residents, or a minimum of 5 per county. But here's the clincher. Any eligible site, which is hospitals, pharmacies, there's certain entities that can collect them. Sheriff's offices are one. Can opt in, ask for a medicine bin, and must be provided one within 3 months. That was a very important provision to me. Then we, again, as I mentioned, compromised with the sharps manufacturers and said, fine, you can do mail back, but we have to reimburse our local governments if the needles end up in their facilities, which tells us something's wrong with the system as far as convenience, et cetera. I have asked the question, by the way, for City of Elk Grove of San Francisco, of the state, as to whether when they think these producer-run groups are going to start reimbursing local governments. It should be coming online pretty quickly. There's penalties in the bill of up to $50,000 a day if they fail to perform. The reason is that these are very well-heeled companies, and we really needed to have a penalty that was significant enough to keep them inspired to perform. The first is to prevent, again, the promotion of disposal. We don't want them, they are not allowed to promote any sort of disposal that's not the program. So that's good. And then we don't want to preempt any local ordinances that were already passed. So those that fought early and hard to get their medicine bins and needle bins out, they didn't lose that program, but they could certainly opt into the state program if it's well run and they want to. Next slide, please. So if you would like to know more, and again, we could do a whole webinar, and probably will next year just on this. This is the Cal Recycle webpage. That's the state agency in California that's overseeing and implementing these two programs. There's a whole web page there. They've got a listserv you can sign up for just medicines or just sharps, no matter what your interest is, or both. And right now they are very close. The regulations are done. The plans are conditionally approved, and they're just beginning to start to roll this out. So it should be all fully rolled out really by January, I'm hoping, of next year, so the public can really see the results of this hard work. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to talk any more about medicines and needles, except to say we are the experts and have been for a long time on medicine and needle disposal policy, from local to state, and now we would like to have it be national. If anybody wants to talk about a national rule, I would love to talk to you, because otherwise we're going to end up with every state in the country taking this on. Actually, could you go back for just a second, Victoria, to the last slide? We were the first in California, and then that drove 7 other states to pass. In fact, I helped Illinois pass theirs last year for just drugs. We were the only ones still that took on both needles and medicines in the United States. I do not expect that to stand. I'm hoping we get a lot more movement, and I would love to work with companies that want to solve this at the national level so we can create a harmonized system. If we don't do that soon, we will end up with different rules in every state. Then they'll want to preempt and do one big, and that's too late. I don't preempt anything that went first or did all the hard work. Well, let them opt in if they want, but I'd love to work with companies that want to solve this at the national level. And some of these companies here today are really showing how innovations can help us achieve a more these policies when passed. So I'll just leave it at that, but that's what we're here for. That's what we do, and we're really good at it. Next slide. We are also good at just negotiation of really, really tough policy. And I just was the only waste NGO, environmental NGO in the room negotiating with 25 people on this SB 54 by Senator Allen packaging rule, which, as I mentioned, exempted medication packaging, which I wasn't happy about, but that's what we had to do to pass it. And we're going to have another free webinar that's hosted by some of our colleagues, sponsored by some of our colleagues. We're hosting it Wednesday, the 28th. So if you're interested in that, it's free, and we'd love for you to register. We don't all have free webinars and get them all sponsored, but thankfully these two were. Next slide, please. And so to wrap it up, we're going to go to questions in just a minute. I do want to say that this is really, really hard work. I've spent, my entire career trying to get to this point where we're really on the tipping point of driving a circular economy in the United States. And we're seeing things happen at the local, state, and national levels. We've been part of all of it. And we've got great support from different companies like RT at Aero Aggregates, that we're a great partner to work with. On the right is the CEO, Wes Carter, and his colleague, Don Meeks, and even our state treasurer, Fiona Ma, who we just gave an award for driving a circular economy. She's been a champion of this for many years, well before when she was a county supervisor in San Francisco and then an assembly member. And then Jordan, of course, of our staff. But we just had an awards event for our leaders in California who are really, and partners like Atlantic Packaging, who are trying to get to all compostable, all recyclable packaging and reducing all the impacts on the environment, people, and public health. We need donations to do this work. We need members. And so please consider joining us. We'd really appreciate it and love to continue this work and grow it and expand it. And we've got a slide on the benefits of membership, how you can donate to either the C3, which does the education, the Stewardship Action Foundation, who hosted today's webinar, or the C4, which does the advocacy work. Both help us, and you can have a lot of benefits of joining. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up with some questions that we've had. A couple come in the Q&A. And thank you, Gwen, and thank you others for saying thanks. I wanted to, I got some early questions that we had submitted to us, and there was a couple I wanted to share. And one was, how was the convenience standard of one drop-off site or one mail-back distribution site for X population determined? That was in the negotiation of the bill. Washington State had negotiated one medicine bin for every 50,000 people. And I did not believe that was enough at all. That was not convenient enough for the majority of people to use it. So I said, we can do that, but you're also going to have to give a bin to anyone who wants it, who's legally allowed to host it. And they agreed to that, and then came back and said, no, we really didn't agree to that. And I said, no, you absolutely agreed to that. And that's the deal, and you will stick with it. And then the authors made it clear that they were going to stick to that. And so that's what we got. That's how it happened. And then the question is, how would this convenience standard be justified for sharps and disposal? Well, there's a big difference in that sharps, again, is a mail-back program. We're not doing drop-off boxes. There's a huge pushback about bringing needles, used needles, into a pharmacy, into a drugstore or a supermarket that has a pharmacy. They just won't do it. They were very clear about that. So it's very, very distinct, those two programs. And the reason, again, is the sharps manufacturers did not want to work with the drug manufacturers. They felt that they were being abused in some of the other partnerships in the counties at the county level, and they did not want that. So that's why it ended up this way. It was actually because of the companies wanting to be separated. I've also been told, let's see, Tim is mentioning, you might want to mention the all-in approach of Santa Cruz County requiring all pharmacies to participate. Thank you, Tim. I forgot to mention that. So that was another innovation that Tim did in Santa Cruz County. When they passed the first all EPR ordinance for medicines and needles, they also required every pharmacy to participate. So that's a very big deal. Others did not do that. So, and again, we didn't at the state level because we got the mail back, which we think is actually more convenient. Okay, one other question is, San Francisco's mandatory diversion for large waste producers like hotels says, how do we protect workers hired to sort? They are finding needles in the bags of waste that are required to be sorted on site. I've actually posed that question already to my friends at San Francisco. I don't have a response back yet, but I can tell you I am not clear on, I did not know that San Francisco had required that. I am worried for people that are not trained or have all the proper equipment to sort through anything, because needles are ending up, as I've said, everywhere. I think the important thing for everybody is whether you're a gas station, I know gas station attendants that have been stuck just removing the trash out of the bathroom, or hotels, airports, anywhere where people who need to inject will go into the bathroom and inject. Put safe needle collection bins in those places next to the trash can. So it's very convenient, and they just put it right in there so it doesn't go in the trash. And then another question, many patients get their pharmaceuticals delivered to their homes. Are policymakers considering ways to make it easy for these patients to also dispose of their medications responsibly? Great question. And one of the great benefits of the EPR ordinances is we had innovations happen as we were rolling them out. We had companies, one in particular I remember, was a boutique company out of the Midwest. They had literally 6 patients in San Francisco that used their very boutique specialized drug for a liver cancer, and they knew exactly who they were, and they provided them with mail-back envelopes that could return any type of medication to them, whether it was their drug or another type of drug. And that was how they complied with the program. So that is, I think you're going to see a lot more companies offering that direct response. And by the way, any of the speakers who want to answer any of these questions, please feel free to, jump on if you'd like. Daryl just asked, what are we doing with Sharps devices that also have electronics or even batteries in them, the diabetic devices? Excellent question. Again, we even have a battery bill in California that's on the governor's desk that includes embedded batteries. But as I've said, pharma has a very powerful lobby, and they've been able to get all medical devices exempted from pretty much everything, whether it's a packaging rule or a battery rule. So this is why I like them taking it back themselves, because then they have to manage the whole of it, the battery, the plastic, the metal, everything. I don't know, Cedric or Manuel or anybody, if you'd like to speak to that, but that would be how I'd answer that question. Okay, I'm not seeing them jump on, so I think we're okay. Another question that was asked pre-webinar. Can the tools and resources that will be presented align with the Canadian biomedical waste guidelines? I wish I was fully briefed on the Canadian biomedical waste guidelines. I don't know if any of our speakers would like to help answer that question. Let us know, but I would assume that we can get all these devices, utilized anywhere at some point, just have to go through the approvals through different agencies. Another question is, speak to the regulations that cover end user clinician Sharps and medicine waste in Ontario. If you're speaking of Ontario, Canada, again, I cannot speak to that. And maybe we should do a whole webinar just on for our Canadian friends, because I know they're really getting into this. And by the way, we based our rule on the Ontario Canada rule, which was the first that I know of in the world that did medicines and needles together. My friend Brad Wright did that, and it was incredible leadership. Another question, how do we dispose of Sharps devices from residents? Again, with the electronic or the battery. So again, those have to be collected separately. They really should have a mail back program. That's the best way to get them, because they could never go into electronics program, which is really where the only other option, because of the needle and the biohazard. And how do they deal with pill bottles is the question. We really like them and would be interested in receiving more of it. Okay, and I do not know, maybe Victoria, you can tell me who actually asked that question and wants pill bottles. Is that in your list?
Yes, 1 second.
Okay, so while she's getting that, I'm assuming that's a recycler. But again, the collection of them is the problem, how they bump through the screens and the sort lines, and if we're able to collect them is usually an issue, or you have to have cameras, AI devices, rather expensive equipment to get them. While she's looking that up, the next question is management of pharmaceutical products for safe recycling and reuse of wastewater. It's not really a question, but I think our speakers did speak about the wastewater having special treatment and making sure it's being properly recycled and hopefully reused, but I couldn't speak to that. I don't know if anybody else, Manuel or Marion.
Yeah, so as far as our process goes, in Europe, we do take care of the wastewater that comes out of our autoclave device and out of our washing system. And we contain that on site, and then it's taken off by a specialist and processed so that then it can be released into the system. We also get all of our devices tested to make sure that there really isn't anything, no medicines or anything else. And because we're dealing with so little fluid, if you think about what's in a sharp spin, there's almost nothing in it. It's different than putting pills down the toilet, right? It's minute, if anything. And so in the US, as far as I know, there's no regulations that say that you have to contain that water. So we've, like our waste facility that we're opening in Florida doesn't have the same kind of water containment system that we have in Dublin. So it just goes down straight down the drain. But we're following Florida regulations to the letter. So that's the situation there. I can only speak to that piece of it.
Interesting. Do you think you might want to just deal with it the way you do it in Dublin, just to avoid, because probably in the future, I would think that would be an issue.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. So we talked about that, and we said, oh, we would like to. Our model is so small that we really want to just duplicate it and footprint it in various different geographies. That's the idea. But we've been told that really the risk is so tiny. Really, what we're putting down the drain is just basically cleaned fluids. So cleaned water, and it's completely sterile by the time it gets into the wastewater system. So the process that we already have in place sterilizes it enough.
Okay, good. Okay, and I just saw another, what was it, a question or, okay, let's see, EFS Plastics is who asked that question. Okay, about the pill bottles. So he says that EFS Plastics really likes them. I know that there's a couple of haulers and hauler associations that are on this call. And if you want to put something in the chat about what you can do, but I know that these very small plastics are very hard for us to capture often. They get stuck, they're small, they spill out of bales, they don't really, our whole system is not really that conducive to collecting them. So if we can get them to you, that's great, but my suspicion is because of the size, it's always going to be a problem where with metals, we can pull them out with magnets. And that is a lot easier to recover. And then there's a comment in the chat by Billy Pook from Santa Clara County. Hi, Billy, good to see you. How was convenience standard? Okay, that was the convenience standard question. So I've already answered that. Okay, well, we are 2 minutes too. This is right on the money. I want to thank, if you turn on your cameras, speakers, and I just want to thank you all so much for everything that you're doing to reduce waste, to help us drive a circular economy, networking companies. We all have to, I always say, we can't close the loop on the material until we close the loop on the conversation. All of us in the stakeholder chain need to work together in order for this to work. And I'm eternally grateful to all of you for all that you're doing, and to all of those who came to watch and share. And we'll post this webinar on our YouTube page. We'll send it out on social media so everybody can watch it for free. And thank you again for your sponsorship, HealthBeacon and Marion, Sarah with UltiMed. Thank you so much again, and to all of you for being here. I hope you found this helpful, and we'll do more soon. Thanks again. And thanks to Victoria. It went great. Really appreciate your support. Bye, everybody.